To continue the program, I am pleased to introduce our first plenary titled Voices from the Front Lines. This conversation is an opportunity to hear from your fellow educators and advocates about the reality of the equity nestled within the current pandemic. To introduce you to your panelists and moderate this discussion, I would like to introduce my colleague, Vilmaris Gonzalez. Vilmaris is the Senior Manager of Engagement and Operations for the Education Trust in Tennessee, where she manages partnerships across the state and works closely with the Student Voice Project and Student Policy Council members. Vilmaris also manages the day-to-day operations of the state office. Prior to joining Ed Trust, she served as the Engagement and Leadership Development Manager at Conexión Américas and on behalf of the Tennessee Education Equity Coalition. While raised in Tennessee, Vilmaris is a New Jersey-born Boricua at heart. She earned her Master of Education at Vanderbilt University's Peabody College of Education in the Learning, Diversity, and Urban Studies program, and holds a bachelor's degree in Spanish and International Business from the University of Tennessee. Vilmaris is also really fantastic. She's gonna be great. Please welcome Vilmaris as she introduces us to our panelists and leads us in this important discussion.
Hello, good morning, everyone. You all can go ahead and come up and we'll get started when we are all seated. But good morning. Yes. Hey.
Thank you.
I guess I can sit down too. So I first just want to welcome you all to Boot. And like I already said, good morning. And my name is Vilmaris Gonzalez. I'm the Senior Manager of Engagement and Operations at the Education Trust in Tennessee, like Sergio mentioned. And I have the privilege and honor this morning of moderating this conversation with some of the fiercest advocates and leaders across the country in education. I'm joined by Trey Cunningham, a student from Tennessee, Colin Wisham from Louisiana, Patty Chavez from California, and Mae Abdullah from New York. And I'll let them introduce themselves in one moment, but right now I want to extend an invitation, and it may feel a little weird, but if you'll indulge me. I invite everybody to close their eyes. So let's all close our eyes. I won't because I'm going to read something to you, but let's all close our eyes. And to get started, let's take a deep breath together for 3 counts in and 3 counts out. So, you can roll your shoulders back if you'd like, right? Kind of get a little comfortable. With your eyes closed, I want you to think about the importance of us being here today. I want you to think about all that it took for you to be here today. The folks back home, your family, your friends, your colleagues, folks in your community, and extend some gratitude to them. I also want you to take a moment to thank yourself for being here, because collectively we have weathered a lot of trauma in the last 2.5 years, and we also have had our own individual battles. So it's no small feat that we're here and that we have the opportunity to learn and be in community. So thank yourselves and thank one another. And you may open your eyes, but I just wanted to take that moment because this is a big deal. For me to be here with all of you and to be learning in community, to have the opportunity to speak with you, is an honor, right? I didn't know when this would come, so thanks for being here, y'all. So without further ado, I will have our panelists introduce themselves, and we'll get started with you, Trey. And we'll just go down the line for intros.
Well, greetings, everyone. I am Trey S Cunningham, a first-year student at the illustrious Tennessee State University. And I double major in healthcare administration and planning and public policy. I serve with the Education Trust in Tennessee as an Empower Ed member on the Student Voice Network, and I'm so happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Colin Wisham. I am a husband. I am a father of 3 amazing kids. I'm currently serving. I'm kind of hesitant to say this as an associate principal because at Geo Prep Mid-City in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a graduate of the Southern University 2 times, my bachelor's and my master's. Thank you.
I like that. Patty Chavez, and I'm with Parent Institute for Quality Education. And next week, my youngest graduates from college. So I have 3 adulting individuals out in the world. So thank you to all the teachers, but thank you to all of you. And I'm excited to be here today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mae Abdullah. I am a parent. I'm an immigrant. And these two I always start with because they shaped my advocacy journey. I have 3 wonderful children, different needs, different challenges, and they're 21, 16, and 14. My oldest graduated high school, graduated college, and she's going to law school this August. It took a lot to get her here, and that's why I'm here. I'm very happy that Kalima thought I had something to share with all of you, and she chose me. I'm part of the current Policy Lab parent group this year, so thanks.
All right, thank you all for those introductions. So to get started, my first question is, considering all that we have weathered collectively and individually in the last 2.5 years, what have you learned about yourself? You can share a bit personally or professionally, but what do you feel like you've learned about yourself in this time?
Well, I guess I'll say so. Ironically, here I am at an Ed Trust boot camp. In 2 years, I started with the Ed Trust before. It was kind of just starting the pandemic. And so I didn't know that I had a strong passion for education policy or, just serving underserved students, like, advocating for students who, are disadvantaged. So I didn't know I had a passion for that. And I think the Education Trust kind of awakened that passion inside of me. They even caused me to change my double major because I was public health at first, but I changed it to public policy because, I found out something that I liked that I didn't know.
All right, I'll piggyback. I would say, as a leader on my campus, I would say the principal or assistant principal or school leader, the energy that you bring into the room is so important. So I would say, as a leader, I've learned how to, I love acronyms, how to use energy, enthusiasm, excitement every day, and it's going to bring the fire into school. So I tell teachers, you can be having the worst day, but that's the best day for a scholar. So just bring that energy consistent.
I was thinking about this morning. I think it's just to trust the journey. If you look at your careers, do you ever sometimes go, oh my gosh, am I supposed to do this? So I'm first generation, and first gen in college, and when my kids were little, I decided to be an at-home mom and have a business at the same time because I was gonna do it all. And I stumbled into policy because of my children and because of school. And that was 15 years ago, and it changed my career, and I started working in nonprofit. 2 months before COVID, I switched gears again from comm strategy and development to policy, because I said, I need to change things. I can't just raise money, and which is great, and do all this, and with direct service, but I wanted to create systemic change. And then COVID hit, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I'm sitting in these meetings with individuals, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's policy. Okay, I've got this. And now 2 years later, I think, okay, this is where I was supposed to be. There's a reason why that journey takes place, and the reason why you add your voice to it with everybody else. So I think that's what I've learned.
So I started getting involved with my children's education back when my daughter was in kindergarten, and I started noticing the gaps in services, and her needs weren't met, and she was put in a box, and everything that she displayed, like she had delay in speech, and that was attributed to like, oh, her parents spoke a different language at home, so she was put in an ESL instead of giving her speech services. And they were disciplined differently. My daughter was very smart, and she excelled in her classes, but she was socializing because she wasn't challenged enough. And instead of putting her in advanced classes, she was disciplined, she was labeled as a troubled kid or disobedient. So I started seeing that, and it wasn't unique to my own children. I noticed, because I'm very connected to the immigrant and refugee community. I worked as an interpreter. So I've seen these issues, so I started like learning. I didn't go to school here, so that was foreign to me. So I started like finding free like resources around the community to educate myself. So just to support them at home, and also wanted to educate the school district around how you help my children and other children like them. So I started my journey, and I noticed that there's a lot that needs to be done, and it's not. And fast forward the pandemic, it reassured me that what I'm doing is I need to be doing more, and the school district was just kind of like, there's a box to be checked. The reality is that the most vocal parents who come to board meetings, and they don't look like me. The parents who had a seat at the table, they don't look like me, they don't have the same background. So fast forward, I'm a board member now, because if I'm not, thank you. So if I'm not at the table, I should bring my own chair and sit there. So, and whatever I learned, I'm sharing with parents like me. And if one parent looks like me, they think, well, she can do it. I should be engaged, I should be involved. And the school district as well, like, they need to hear from us, and I use every opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much for your responses, and I just want to say that in this plenary session, I hope that bits of this conversation resonate with you. I feel like the purpose is really just to humanize this space and the experiences that these different advocates have led in these last few years, and how that relates to you. So thank you all for your honesty as well. My next question is for you, Colin. So as an associate principal, you were responsible for helping your school transition to online learning and then back to in-person. What was the hardest? What was the most rewarding? And what do you feel like you will move forward in your work, take forward?
Okay, so prior to the question, I wrote a few notes down. I would say the hardest would be access. We didn't have access to all the resources, being that we were an urban school. So I would say like internet, the hotspots, so access. If I had to say most rewarding, now we're able to take the new innovative technology and kind of implement it into our everyday life. So that's rewarding. And then the last thing, as far as still utilize, the virtual component. Like you can have a parent meeting on Zoom now. You can have a meeting with another principal downstairs on Zoom now. So that piece now is very convenient.
Thank you for sharing that. Especially that access piece. I feel like even within professional settings, that was something that we had to weather and figure out. So thanks for sharing that. My next question is for you, Mae. So we've always said that parent voices matter. And now we have groups like Moms for Liberty that antagonize teachers and support discriminatory policies and legislation. How do we reconcile with parent groups like them? And how do we ensure that they don't co-opt the movement and parent spaces?
Okay.
I told Mae too in prep for this, I was like, your question's a little provocative. We're gonna go there. So thank you.
Yes. So let's call it as what it is. They're attacking democracy. They are taking up space because they have their own right-wing agenda, and it's not. They're not hiding it. They are showing up at board meetings, attacking school officials. They are very vocal. They threatened school staff and other parents who are not. Their agendas are not aligned with them. I'm running for a re-election, and one parent is actually one of them running against me. And they are using tactics to scare families. They're saying schools are grooming children for sexual abuse, so I always say for parents, get involved, learn what's happening, what's going on around your schools, and if you can't come to a board meeting or get engaged anywhere, and we saw with the pandemic, it doesn't have to be in person. We saw how we shifted to online meetings, and we shifted to like phone calls. So whatever you can, just get engaged and get involved and be educated around what's happening at your schools. These parents are actually demanding to change the curriculum. We don't send our kids to learn what we want them to learn. We want them to be lifelong learners who have what the society want them to learn. Like, so I'm a big believer in parents' involvement and parent voice, but they're using that as like, this is our freedom, and we're attacking their rights to speak, and that's not it is. That's what it is. So, did you want to ask?
Can I share something? Sure. Raise your hand if you're a parent in the room. All right, a lot of parents. We need you guys in the school. So call your school, show up, ask them, can you go sit in the classroom? It is vital to have that support. Parental support is everything for an educator. So we need y'all. So please get involved. Yes. Definitely get involved.
I want to ask a follow-up question to Mae. How do you navigate wearing both hats? So being a parent advocate on your own time, right, for the interest of your children and also children who are similar to yours, but also wearing that school board hat. How do you navigate both of those?
So actually being a parent and working closely with communities from refugees and immigrants shaped how the decisions the board makes, that I take that and I use that as a lens, and I see how resources are not allocated equitably, because the truth is parents are most vocal are from a certain socioeconomic, because they have the time to show up at board meetings, they have the time to volunteer. I worked 2 jobs before. I wasn't involved because I didn't have the time. I had a partner who worked night shifts, so we both didn't have to. And also, I didn't have the background. When I started learning more about the school system, I knew more rights. I found ways and resources to help me. I had the passion. I needed the tools to help me advocate. I went to CSC meetings. First of all, I didn't know what a CSC is, and no one took the time to teach me what a CSC is for my child, and I just nodded every time they said, he needs this and he needs that. Then when I leave, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. He doesn't need that. He needs this, but I didn't have the tools to challenge them, because in my culture, my mom is a teacher. In my culture, we respect doctors, God, and teachers. We don't challenge them. So it took a while for the school, and I teach the board, I teach the school district, hey, don't rely on, the immigrants, they're in the survival mode, they're refugees, they need resources, food, and no, yes, they do that, but they are invested in their children's education. Give them the tools. Provide interpreters at board meetings, at PTA meetings, and when you go in a classroom, and you don't see our children in an advanced math class, ask yourselves why they're not there. Well, they're not there. If my child is doing well in a classroom, but they are not recommended for an advanced math class, ask yourself that we should hold not only the teacher, the school district, the superintendent, why are our children not in these classrooms? Why are not? And that, one example, my daughter went to an advanced class. Every opportunity she got, that led her to go to college with excellent GPA. College was easy for her because she took those rigorous classes. That shaped her life. She's going to law school because of the opportunity that I advocated for. And I share this with all the parents. You should be asking these questions. Get involved. Don't take whatever the school tells you as like, you can't challenge it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, if I can
thank you
add
so much.
really quick,
course.
but for all of us, encourage other parents. A lot of the parents that we work with, they're humble, they're scared, they feel they have a lot to lose. So not only do they not have the tools and the resources, they may not feel welcome or not know how, or just quite fear. So I think that building of community with one another, if the school doesn't have it, then we can do it together for them as well.
Thank you for that, Patty, and thank you, Mae, as well. My next question is for you, Trey, as the student on the panel. So as Trey mentioned, he started his journey with the Education Trust about a little over 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic. And I've had the privilege of working with Trey. Did this go out? I had the privilege of working with Trey since the start of the pandemic. And when I met Trey, he was actually in high school. And he's now transitioned and gone on to post-secondary and attends the illustrious Tennessee State University, which he always mentions. So Trey, my question for you is, 2 years ago you were in high school when I met you, and you transitioned to online learning, and then later have gone on to college, and you are a first-year student at TSU. How has the pandemic and other current events impacted your journey as a student?
Check, check, check.
Okay, yeah. Am I on? Okay, so I would definitely say something that impacted my academic journey from just in high school, and that kind of trickled into my first year because we had went hybrid. Even my first year, majority of my first year of college was the online learning aspect. That was a huge change for me. And I'm one of those type of people. I'm a hands-on learner. So it was kind of hard for me to go from being in class and, having the high GPA and, doing my work in person with a teacher in front of me to going on an online portal and it sometimes not telling me when stuff is due. And I'm missing, because when we first started, I was missing due dates and I was like, oh, I'm seeing zeros pop in, and I'm like, what's going on? Hold on. So it was really hard for me to adjust, and luckily I did at some point, but the online learning aspect was really, really rough at the beginning, but I eventually got the hang of it.
Does this one work? Thanks. Thank you for that, Trey. And I just had another follow-up question for you related to that, but it's kind of escaped me, so I'm going to come back to you in a second with the mic going out. Patty, so you've had your hand in lots of different sectors, legislative, private, public. Professionally, you've had like an aerial view of how this work exists. What would you say are missed opportunities during this time? Who do we need to call in, and who is missing?
We had talked about this earlier. So I think I see it in two ways. One, from a broader level, is collaboration, like true collaboration, not just partnership where you slap a logo somewhere, and you come to the table. But during COVID, you started seeing a little bit more of that, right? People coming to the table, cross-sector partners coming to the table, schools saying, okay, I'm going to reach out a little bit and ask for help. And it seems like now we're going backward again. It's like, well, what happened? We asked parents to come to the table to partner with us because teachers needed help, and now we're going back to just sending them robocalls. That true collaboration to look at our school community and education holistically. And have not, I'm all about local policy. Traffic impacts schools, right? Crime impacts the schools, the zoning impacts. So having business leaders, having local government, having our local CBOs, even, and we talk about all our CBOs, so come to the table, leave and talk about us. The previous conversation was about responsibility. Not talk about them, right? They need help. It's really about us and about our community. And we saw that a little bit during COVID. And I think we need to keep moving forward that way. The other piece, and I just think, and it's not rocket science, it's the one-on-one communication. We're going digital, and we have to, because that's just the way the world is going. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be connecting with one another. And for our families, that means the world. And I think in our work, that was our secret sauce, that on March 13th, when we started trying to figure out what we were going to do, because our families didn't have computers, they didn't have emails, and schools were going to have to use that, right, is to pick up the phone and call a parent, and the first question is, how are you doing? What's going on? because we know that the stressors in the home are going to impact the child, it's going to impact the whole family. They're not going to be thinking about doing homework if they can't feed their child tomorrow, or they're afraid because their family members are dying. I mean, they lost loved ones. So I think that one-on-one connection, and our schools partners ask us, they're like, how did you get 18,000 families online? Like, we made 60,000 phone calls. And it took time. And it wasn't easy, right? It's just capacity, and if we collaborated, then we can do that together.
Systems, strategies, and support is very important in that. So system, strategy, and support. You have to have a proper system. So look at the system, get a strategy to approach that system, and then that support on the back end is vital as well.
Thank you for that, Patty. I think that connection piece is really important, and that was my follow-up question, but I just lost my train of thought with the microphone. For Trey, and I mean, I think this could honestly apply to all of us, right? Because connection looked different once the pandemic happened, right? So if you're a student, I couldn't just walk up to my teacher and ask a question, right? I had to think of sending an email or a message. I had to worry about my grammar. I had to worry about how that message would be received, and then wonder when my teacher would have time to reply, right? And I know that was the case not just for students, but also in professional settings too, because we're experiencing a sense of disconnection. So that piece of collaboration and connection and just humanizing and starting with the how are you is critical. And for you, Trey, I'm just curious, what was that like, feeling like every day you're going into a school building, you're learning in community, you're spending time with your peers, and that just radically shifts?
So when that first happened, I would never forget, like, when it happened. We went for spring break, and we got emails and stuff, and we're like, oh, we're delayed for 3 days, and 3 days turned into a week, and then it turned into a month, and then a year, and so on and so on. So it was very, very, I will say that, and this is, I'm just putting this out there, that it was mentally hard, because socially, I hadn't seen my friends or my teachers who I knew who really, really cared about me in a very long time. And coming from a school district that is really small, I come from a community where we have one high school, one middle school, one elementary school. Everybody's kind of close-knit and tight, so it was really hard to go from seeing people who, I walk in the building and they're like, oh, Trey, how are you today? Oh, how's your mom? Because everybody knows everybody. That was kind of hard to, being in the house, and, that personable touch it was hard to get that on Zoom. So, it was kind of more, we get on Zoom, it's down to business. Let's go over what we have to do today, and then Zoom fatigue is real. So everybody's tired of Zoom. So, as soon as the teacher says, well, everybody's already off before she finishes her sentence. So, it was hard to get that personable touch.
No, I know that I experienced that as well. I remember when I did see a few folks for the first time outside and being like, oh, like, you can say good morning to someone, right? Because you didn't really even have those interactions for a bit. I was getting groceries delivered, right? I was avoiding people. So that's very real. And something I also want to speak to, Patty, you were talking about just the different sectors and how they all interact and intersect. And I think that's also something that is oftentimes critically missing from these conversations, is how do we collaborate with different agencies and different leaders in the community, because education is not a siloed issue. Everyone goes through the education system. It's part of the larger ecosystem and how our country operates, right? And how we produce folks out into the real world. So knowing that those relationships are just so foundational, and how we can do that more. So thank you for sharing that. Trey touched on mental health, and I know for me that's just been a battle in the last couple years. It's been hard. I just would love to know, what's like one thing you've been doing this last couple years, maybe that you weren't doing before, to take care of yourself? I know I didn't prepare this question for them, so anyone can go. Yeah.
The pause because it hit. I'm sorry. I paused because it hits home. It was hard. It was difficult. The positive, I had all my children at home. The one was in college. She came home because she was doing online classes, but it was tough on her. She struggled tremendously because part of being in college was she was involved in clubs and she was with her friends, and she missed that. And also, there weren't any creative ways to engage her. I know professors were new, some of them were new to this online teaching. So they were like, they had their camera off and went on with their business. So it was tough. My children who were in school, I don't think we give the teachers enough time. And I'm glad you mentioned we are so focused on teaching and testing, we didn't give them we don't give them the flexibility to actually take time off and say, I see this child is struggling. Maybe we just postpone or pause on teaching and focus just to check in and see how they're doing. So, and I have a child with disability, so online learning was like, nope. He doesn't do anything online. He needed an aid that wasn't provided. I had no idea what to teach him. So it was a struggle, and I'm sharing this because I share this with other parents as well, because I know it's not unique to my situation or my family. And if we get one thing right, moving on, we seem to be coming out of this rock, under the rock. We need to learn, we need to take, we don't have one path for our children to learn. Not all of them learn the same. Our families are not the same. We need to consider cultural, linguistics differences. And when we say we're all about equity and we put statements on our school's website, we need resources to actually do that. Teachers, when you hand them the book, SEL, and you want them to learn, you need to give them the time, actually. They're going to actually push back, because if you put it on top of what they already have on the table to do, they're not gonna do it. And it's not gonna be the authentic, something that we really want, or we're not gonna get the results out of it. So, and I forgot what your question.
No, I mean, I was listening. I'm like, yes, yes. I feel like other folks were too.
Okay,
but
I hope that I answered.
no,
yeah.
just something that you're doing to take care of yourself. Because
So,
you're passionate and you're in this
So
work.
I gave myself permission to eat whatever I want. And I did not, and I focused, and I really pushed. I used to push, and I admit this, I pushed my children, and I was very tough on them. Homework, do this and do that. I gave them permission not to do it if they couldn't do it. I really, really focused on their mental and health. We all play games, and school night, who cares? We play games. We stay up till 10 or 11, we play games. So just gave them the flexibility. And I saw results, and I saw how they started to engage with me and with their dad, and talked about what they go through, and that wasn't something they were doing before, because they were on their laptop doing homework or talking to their friends on their devices. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Mae. And whoever just wants to jump in.
Create boundaries. Like, we have to have fun. I'm a little bit of a workaholic, so it was, my husband and I were empty nesters, and then two of the kids came back. We're like, okay, they're back. And we were stuck. But we ended up having fun, dancing in the kitchen, baking, doing things that you just didn't focus on before, right? And how important was that? And then encouraging others to do it as well. So I think that's one of the things we want to keep dancing.
Setting those boundaries. Yeah. We love that.
So finding time for self-care is hard. So I try to do the 30-30 rule. Find 30 minutes to work out, 30 minutes to read, 30 minutes for family time. So that's how I approach self-care.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Well, everybody else was talking about relaxing and stuff, but I decided to take advantage of a lot of discounted things because like certifications and things like that became discounted. Like, so I spent my time getting like Microsoft Office certified and and
That's huge.
Yeah. I became certified in Adobe, Photoshop, so everything was discounted because nobody was doing it. So
That's a different perspective.
We love that, Trey. Lifelong learner. So I have one last question just for everyone before we transition to the Q&A. I'm actually not sure where we are with time, but hopefully we can open the floor up for a few minutes. Just given everything you've shared today with us, and I know it's just like the top, right? Like it's just the surface. What gives you hope? And what is your call to action for our advocates in attendance at boot camp?
I'll start. Resilience. I think for our families that everything that was happening, I had a mom say, I'm going to do this. I'm figuring out the internet. I've got a child in the hallway, one in the bathroom, one in the kitchen, one in the balcony, and we're going to have quiet time. They came to the table and our families were strong. And then we're also seeing some of the policy. We're getting there, right? We finally see family, the word family in policy. We're seeing two-way communication in policy. We're starting to get there. So I know things take a really long time, but the fact that we saw that in the last 2 years and we had been fighting digital divide and all these other, family engagement, that we're getting to a point that we're starting to see it from a policy perspective.
Thank you for that, Patty.
So just looking around the room, to be honest, I'm very hopeful. I'm hearing and I'm gonna take a lot of ideas that I learned from interacting with all of you. I feel like we started to make progress of who's on the table, who's discussing issues that impacting us directly. I used to go in rooms where I'm the only non-white person in the room. So this actually gives me hope. Thank you for this. I started seeing how parents are more, because there are resources out there. Because if you provide an education opportunity, you need to provide also daycare, transportation, dinner, maybe, because these are all barriers that stand on the way of parents or families in general to take advantage of the opportunity. Fees, I don't have money to learn, unless it's discounted. So what gives me hope is that there is work starting to happen and our voices are included, but there is more work to do. So parents, get involved, yes.
Thank you, Mae, and thank you, Patty, too. I think there was overlap in your responses of resilience, of humanizing, and how what gives you hope is just the different ways that we're now hopefully approaching policy and what's emerging. So thank you both for that perspective.
All right, so I would say impact give me hope. Every conversation, everything that we do in these schools need to be geared toward impact. So if we focus on that impact, that gives me hope to see a growing community, from the students growing, to the teachers growing, to the principals, getting more certification, as you say. And then moving forward, I would say continue this conversation. Don't just be here, but be present, be engaged in these conversations, and let's push together to see the system change and give these teachers trainings. Like, teachers need training. Every job in America, right? You have about 2 weeks of training, right? Being a teacher, we're giving you keys and say we go and be great. We can't do it like that. We have to come together, continue this conversation, and really push for change.
Thank you, Colin. And Trey, what about you? What gives you hope?
I'm not eager to answer. But what gives me hope, I would say, is just basically the future. You know, like being in this room full of really passionate individuals, like everybody here, like I've been walking around and just like hearing little side conversations, and like people are so riled up and, you know, passionate about what they do, and you know, just seeing like everything going forward in the world right now. You know, where I feel like we're toward the end of the pandemic. You know, I think that just the future, right? So that's pretty much what I have.
I love that. I love that you feel a sense of optimism. I think that's so important. So thanks for sharing. And Trey did say a lot yesterday, y'all. I spent a lot of time with him, was with him all day yesterday, and he kept saying, all of y'all are really passionate. And he was saying that until right before we went to bed. He was like, this is interesting. I was like, yeah, yep. Even walking to the Washington Monument talking about data, right? Like there literally was a conversation beside us. So yes, a lot of passion. Do you have a call to action for the folks here today though, Trey, from a student perspective? Like an ask for them?
Oh, I would say from a student perspective, as a student, what I'm trying to think of what we need as students from people like you. I don't know.
Just say take advantage of getting these certifications.
Now that's a good one.
That's a good go-to.
Well, that is true. Well, that is a good thing that how me and she's in the back. Me and Kermai Burrell are the only students here. So I feel like if you could just like support us, you know, as students, you know, it's not a lot of support around students like in this work. You know, we get a lot from the Education Trust, you know, but I just would say, you know, could you support us more, you know, as students?
So get more students here too.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that was the point, you know. We would love a whole student section here, you know. That would be awesome.
Goals. All right. Well, thank you so much, Trey. So now we'll open up questions to the floor if anyone has questions for our panelists. And then how are we doing? Are we passing around microphones or, yeah? All right, so I saw that hand go up first. Right here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Edna Shack.
No.
Yes, it is. Yep. Okay. I'm Edna Shack from Moorhead, Kentucky. Thrilled to be here. I'm retired, but what the passion again is just incredible to see what people are doing, and I love to be a part of it. But I wanted to comment on your question about what you did during the pandemic for your own mental health. What a positive question. And each one of you gave very optimistic responses, and responses that said you did something during the pandemic that you would not have done otherwise. And one of the things that we keep hearing, and I'm not discounting this. Okay, all right. Is it working? Yeah. I'm not discounting the loss of learning that students have had or the trauma that some of them endured during the pandemic. But we need to ask them, what did you do? What did you learn that you would not have learned otherwise? Because I think a lot of that is going on. I think when we focus on the loss of learning, it's kind of that deficit perspective. So let's make a more positive perspective. So that wasn't a question, but a comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Oh, yep. Go ahead.
Hi, so my name is Sierra Hart, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm an educator and community organizer. My question is for our student, Trey. So in the classroom, I see students all the time who are excited and fired up about education. What do you recommend, being that you started your journey in education advocacy as a high school student? How do we as system leaders and advocates continue to encourage more students to get involved? How do you recommend that we engage them so that we can have more sitting in spaces and rooms like this?
And just to clarify, you saying like getting involved in like education advocacy?
Yeah.
I would say what made me get more involved, and I have a lot of people in my life who, you know, brought me into this work. prime example of one of my mentors growing up, Gloria Jean Sweetlove from the Tennessee State Conference, NAACP. She let me know that, you know, as a student, and Ed Trust let me know this as well, that I'm an expert in my own experiences. And so there's value there. And that I should speak on my experiences. And I feel like letting students know like that your experiences have value, and that to take that to policymakers and legislators, like you can truly make a difference, like big differences. You know, your testimony, I even had the opportunity to potentially go do testimony, you know, at my Capitol in Tennessee. You know, those experiences, that's like once in a lifetime. So I would just say let students know that your voice matters. It's very important, and that you can make a lot of change with it, like letting them know the power of their voice, because I don't think that students really know that until we become like adults, like how powerful our voice truly is.
Thank you. Beautiful answer.
Thank you, Trey.
Hi, my name is Marlo. I'm with Community Coalition in South Central Los Angeles. And I wanted to, first, I just have to say that I agree with whoever said that, you know, I think it was you, Trey, that said that it's like this group of people just gives you hope, because it's like when we're working in our own organizations, it kind of feels sometimes like a silo, like you're the only person working on this. And coming in here and seeing all these people that are from all across the nation just doing the same work is amazingly just inspirational. And a lot of you guys are so young. It's like, oh, it's great, okay. But in Los Angeles, and LAUSD being one of the largest school districts in the nation, one of the challenges that we have is, well, two things. One of the challenges that we have is that all of our students are not on the same playing ground. And so when we went into the pandemic, when it was easy for some of them to transition into online learning because they had computers and they had access to Wi-Fi and all of the above. But we had a challenge with our students, our Black and brown students, not being able to participate in a manner, and for a number of different reasons. One, maybe not having a laptop, or not having a computer in the home. Two, if you have Wi-Fi, everybody's on it, and so it's just not feasible, especially if you have multiple students in the house. And three, not being able to be fully present because of the environment, you know. And so I wanted to ask the question if there was any barriers to you transitioning into online learning, and how those were troubleshot. And secondly, the question to everyone is, how do we get the parents involved? Because we all know that they need to be involved, and the challenge is that we haven't been able to get them to actually come and bring their own chair to the table, or just come invited with a seat there for you. Get them actually to come out and to actually be more involved in the learning of their youth. So those two questions: what were the barriers and how they navigated it, and how do we get parents involved?
Well, I'll jump in really quickly. So one, with digital literacy, think about it. Our Chromebooks are different than computers and tablets and phones. When we made phone calls to our families, we found out that a lot of them had mobile phones, old Samsungs, right? Some of them couldn't get onto Zoom. It was a one-on-one working with the families, because they were embarrassed that they didn't know. They didn't want to ask. And it really was over the phone. It wasn't a computer, it was over the phone. Okay, ma'am, bring out your phone. How do you do that? To get them onto Zoom first. And that was our first step. And it not only created an opportunity to have a cohort and a group where you can continue, working with the platform that they had in their home language, right, where they were at, but it created community. We talked about having people in like rooms. That was for the families, that they weren't alone. They weren't the only ones who didn't know how to turn on a Chromebook. It wasn't just the kids, it was the families. The third grader, the fourth grader, fifth grader wasn't going to troubleshoot the computer. They didn't know what was happening with the internet. And for a lot of families, that was the only technology they had. It's because the school gave them technology, and then they took it away in the summer, right? And they were left with nothing. So a lot of it was, how can we unlock the phone using social media, using WhatsApp, using apps that they already knew, and we're still working on it. And I think that was very important for us, for anybody doing policy and working in the space, to remember that families don't know what Wi-Fi was. They didn't know what hotspot was. They didn't know how to download there, and it was very embarrassing for them. So creating that support system was important. The second one on family engagement, I'm gonna say it's trust. And if it's not the teacher, then it's somebody on the campus, it's their friends. Because you can say, hey, I'm gonna send out a flyer, we have a workshop, come to the workshop. Well, they don't know anybody, they don't know the language, they're busy, they haven't been there for a long time. So I think in family engagement, it's not just one way, it's different ways. And we would say during COVID, share. Use Facebook, use text message, make phone calls, stop at somebody's house, do a phone tree. There's not just one way. We just have to keep reimagining how to connect and then welcome. And I had families who say, well, nobody really called me. They're like, oh, but we sent a robocall. That's not two-way communication.
If I can echo some of those sentiments, I would say just utilizing what we have already, right? That Instagram, that Facebook, and being consistent at it. Like you said earlier about the experts in the room. Every teacher, every person who come to these meetings, they're experts at something. So be open and engage those things and keep on pushing forward, staying consistent. Now, as far as what you said, the first part of your question about the main issue with virtual, right? I would say checking for understanding. It was so hard to check for understanding with these scholars, but it's still moving forward. What are our steps moving forward? And that goes back to training, it goes back to support, it goes back to showing up and being present when you show up.
And
So-
don't give up.
Quickly, I'm
That's
just
it.
going to add the creative ways our school district and parents actually push for that is providing free internet service. We pushed for legislators to actually demand our internet service provider to provide free internet service for our families. Everyone gets it during COVID, got it. When families shared that they don't have the space for their children to focus and at home because they have other children at home, we provided learning pods, spaces in our schools where they came and sat in a small room by themselves. We found transportation for them. Other parents pushed for transportation. I'm going to work. I work at Marshall's. If they're open, I'm not gonna have time to drive them. We asked for transportation. The other part, like families who English is not their first language, we found how they communicate. We communicated through WhatsApp. We use something called Probio, which it's a language translating service. So we communicated with them. For parents who are not coming to the school, that's the second part. I don't have to come to school to know more about it. Come to me, to my community. So we ask, and have someone who looks like them, speaks their language, invite them over. So I want someone who I trust. I build a relationship. So when you need me to come, you already have that established relationship with me. So I come to you, but you push first. You go in their communities and evaluate what their needs are, build that relationship. And first, schools have their English language learners. they have teachers who work closely with them. They do home visits. So that's an opportunity for you to establish that relationship with the family, know them, know their concern, their challenges, their strength, and use that. Don't just focus on the deficits. That's always something I say. So build that relationship, and so easy, build that communication first.
Thank you for that, Mae. Trust, Patty, you mentioned that too, and just being culturally responsive, meeting parents and folks where they're at and not making assumptions. So very important. Did you want to?
I'll just add on about the barrier. I will say that during the whole pandemic when we were at home, I remember having, and this goes back to students knowing the power of their voices. Fortunately, I was blessed enough to have Wi-Fi and access to technology during the whole thing, but I had some friends who didn't have Wi-Fi. Who lived in underserved communities and who were disadvantaged. And so, I was a friend inviting people over my house, oh, you can use my Wi-Fi, And so, to get your work done, but, people were embarrassed to tell the school, well, I don't have Wi-Fi or I don't have a computer. So, I was a part of a group of people who, and I had Wi-Fi, but still, speaking up for people. I was a part of a group of people who had went to the school board meetings and said, look, my friends, can't get their work done. And their teachers are, emailing their parents saying, oh, your child isn't doing their work, and they don't even know that, so. That was a big barrier in my community. And one thing that our superintendent, he did after they had put buses, it was really innovative. They had used school buses and put them around in the communities and put Wi-Fi on them. And so they could connect to them. They sent the passwords out. They were everywhere, so it was really neat.
Thank you for sharing that. And it goes again to being culturally responsive and meeting folks where they are, right, and not making those assumptions. So thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question before we wrap up.
Mira, we're both wearing the pink, so I'm loving this. Yo soy boricua igual, so I love it.
Hey, para que tú lo sepas.
Ya tú sabes. Okay, so my name is Yvette Russell. I am the Chief Program and Partnerships Officer. I hate having my back to people, so I'm just gonna move over here. For Read Alliance, we hire, train, and pay teens to serve as tutors after school for kindergarten, first, and second grade students. And it has been phenomenal to watch our teens and our students still develop a relationship even in the virtual space. We hire teachers to actually support the work that we do. One of the most beautiful things for our little kids and our teens to see is they're working and being supervised by teachers that look like them, right? But that is, I'm representing New York, we're in New York City, and it's the largest school district in our country, and we have the lowest rate of teachers of color. Representation matters. So my question, Kylan, is for you as someone who's not only in education, but you're in a leadership position, and you're a black man. They will never get to see someone like you in a leadership role, and that does something, it says something. And so I wonder, what motivated you not only to get into education, but to take on the leadership that you have? And in addition to that, what are the ways that you're supported? Because getting in that role is one thing. Being able to really navigate that role has got to be complicated, particularly when you probably came up in the same type of school system that our children are now in, where they don't have representation. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective how you do that.
All right, thank you
Great
for
question.
that. So I have a non-traditional entry into education. For about 13 years, I was an operation manager. My wife is an educator. So she received her master's, and my background, a long time ago, I ran track for Southern University, was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I still wanted to go back and coach. But then, along me coaching, I was reading, I saw a lot of disconnection in me laying off a few people, talking about cell phone policies, just seeing that disconnect. So I said, baby, I want to go coach. I'm sorry to say, baby, y'all family now, right? So I said, baby, I want to go coach. I started coaching, and then I saw leaders in position, and I was like, these are our leaders, and they're impacting our teachers, and these teachers are impacting our students. That was a big disconnect. So besides being just a coach, I got enrolled in school. Went to school got my credentials, because you can't really have a conversation without credentials, right? So got my credentials and just stay consistent at it, and then being an ear, moved up from a sub to a teacher to a dean to on the admin team to now associate principal. But every day I see scholars for somebody else. It means nothing if you can't give it back. Now, as far as support, I look for impact. I get energized and empowered to see John having a bad day. Mr. Wisham, how you doing, man? I miss you. I love that. A teacher, she needs 15 minutes to just vent, right? I'm their ear. I sit there, I listen to them, give them advice, let's move. But we always have to have small goals, right? Teacher need to grow too. So I get energized to see everybody grow, from student to my kids at my house, to my teachers, to us as on this platform. What he said earlier about certification. Find some way to grow yourself, because we can't grow them if we're not growing us. All right, I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. Well, I believe we are now at time, so I just want to thank you all for participating in this conversation, for being so authentic and honest, and for just being here and sharing your lived experience and expertise with us. So if we can give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all so much, and I'm going to pass it now back to Sergio.